What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel that we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories. Now, guys, today we are going to jump back over to Marvel Comics and we're going to wrap up the Messiah Complex storyline. Now, if you are new to my channel, we have been covering an old story from the X-Men landscape called the Messiah Complex. And in this storyline, it has been 2 years since the House of M event, where basically there are now only 100 few mutants out there in the world. But after years of trying to survive with the last amount of mutants, one child has been born. And so guys, we are going to finally end this long storyline and see what happens with the newborn mutant and Cable trying to protect this child from the X-Men all the way to the Marauders and the Purifiers. But guys, I do hope you enjoy this ending. Alright, jumping back into the Messiah Complex, we pick up with one of the clones of Jamie Madrox and Layla Miller, which, if you guys remember, they were sent into the future because Forge was looking at the time stream, which led him to see that there are now 2 possible futures. And so these guys went into one of the futures to see what will happen. But also the fact they found out this future is Bishop's future. And so you have Layla Miller and Jamie Madrox look for the younger version of Bishop before he grew up and left for the present day. They want to know what led to this future in the first place. Now, this is where you have the young Bishop tell us what happened here in his future. That basically the baby was born, which of course grew up to become an adult. But that is when the mutant powers went crazy and killed millions of people, which then led to the government throwing mutants into this camp. Now, you have Bishop keep calling this child the Messiah, which is something the child back in the present day everyone is after has been called a couple times as well. And so with them learning this piece of information, you have Layla Miller kill the clone of Jamie Madrox, which then would send everything he knows back to the original Jamie Madrox, who's in the present day, to tell the X-Men what had happened in the future. But the big problem is, though, that now leaves Layla Miller trapped in the future. Now, picking back up in the present day, we pick up with Cyclops and Emma Frost, who just got word on where is Gambit and the rest of the Marauders. Remember, in our last video, they are the ones who have the baby at the moment. And so it is the X-Men trying to get it back from them. And so with that being said, you have Cyclops send Wolverine, Bishop, and a few other X-Men people to go after the Marauders to get the baby back from them. But as soon as the team leaves to go after the Marauders, you have the original Jamie Madrox wake up from his coma, which I don't think I mentioned this. Since his clones was sent into the future, he fell into a coma, but now woke up with the memories of the future thanks to his clone. And so he tells Cyclops and Emma Frost they need to stop Bishop because he is planning to kill the baby. Now we do pick up with Cable and Charles Xavier. If you remember, at the end of our last video, we saw Cable call up Charles Xavier asking for help, which Charles Xavier will help Cable as long as he likes what he hears. And so if Cable tells Charles Xavier that sounds like Charles needs to shut the mind down of Cable, he will do it, because that child is supposed to be the savior of the mutant race. And so you have Cable tell Charles Xavier that he has seen the future, and the future is messed up. But if the child is alive and get the proper care like it should, well, Bishop future won't happen. Instead, this child be able to save the mutant race and the humans race as well. But we then see Charles Xavier tell Cable they are heading to Muir Island because the baby and the Marauders are hiding out over there. And so we now jump over to Muir Island and we pick up with Gambit, which this is going to be the huge thing about this part of the story, because you didn't have Gambit hand over the baby to Mr. Sinister. But we come to find out that this is not Mr. Sinister. This is Mystique, and she just killed Mr. Sinister because she has a different plan for the baby. The big question now is, what is her big plan for the baby? But while they are taking the baby somewhere, the other Marauders are waiting outside, which then they hear something coming from behind. On to see X-Force there ready to take them down and get the baby back from them. And while that is going on, we jump back over to the X-Mansion, which we now pick up with the new X-Men, where we see that they are waiting for the X-Men to return back home. Which, while these young X-Men are waiting, they find Predator X. Remember, this creature was made to hunt down mutants, and so his hunt led him here to the X-Mansion to try to kill some of the X-Men people. But we then jump over to Mystique and Gambit, and this is huge because she is planning to use the baby as a way to help Rogue out. Because before this storyline, Rogue got put in a coma because she was shot. Now, Mr. Sinister kept Rogue alive only because she is holding information about Destiny Diaries. Destiny was this character who had the ability to see a possible future, meaning that it wasn't 100% for sure going to happen. Now, the diaries hold information about possible futures to come. And so Mystique's game plan is to use the baby, hoping it will heal Rogue and she'll be able to tell what Destiny Diaries were holding. Now, usually when it comes to Rogue, when someone stays in contact with her over a long period of time, she usually puts them in a coma or could lead to them actually dying. But right after the baby touches Rogue, we see two things happen here. Rogue does not wake up from her coma, and the second, the baby actually lives after holding long contact with Rogue, which for Gambit, this is a huge thing for him to see this happen. Now, while you have X-Force fighting against the Marauders outside the building, this is where the story brings almost everyone here for the big final battle, because right after the X-Force gets there, you also have Cyclops and a few other X-Men appear for the final battle here on Muir Island, which Cyclops team now knows that Bishop is really not a good guy, that he is actually here to kill the baby. And so right now you have Cyclops trying to find Bishop, but then you also have the new X-Men arrive, because back at the X-Mansion, they were fighting against Predator X. But then you have Pixie teleport everyone to Muir Island because they need X-23 or Wolverine to help kill Predator X. Wait, we are still not done, because off the shore of the island, you have Cable and Charles Xavier appear for the big final battle as well. And so everyone is here for this big final battle now on Muir Island. Now you do have Cable and Charles Xavier sneak into the base of the Marauders and make Gambit hand over the baby so they get to safety. But right when Cable gets the baby, you have Bishop appear again trying to kill the baby, and also Predator X as well. Now, with everyone fighting against each other, it is basically an all-out war here. But that is when you have Cyclops walk up on Cable. This is where you have Cyclops tell Cable to give him the baby, because this baby has been seen as the messiah for the mutant race. Because the last couple years, there is only a few hundreds of mutants left on Earth. And so the X-Men believe this baby could be the meaning of the return of the mutant race numbers. But you have Cable trying to show Cyclops that the baby is not safe, because there is an all-out battle happening around them right now. But then you have Charles Xavier tell Cable to give the baby over to Cyclops. Now, Rogue does wake up from her coma, which is huge, because this is her now getting put back on as active for rioters to use. But after she wakes up, Mystique tells her that she used the baby to save her life. But Rogue gets pissed off because the fact Mystique used a child to basically save her life. Because Rogue is now hearing that a child was used and could have been killed to bring her back. And so you have Rogue use her powers to kind of put Mystique asleep by just keeping long contact with her for a long period of time, which Mystique is now knocked out. And you have her leave to get away from the X-Men and all of this crazy mess that is going on. Now, real quick, I want to jump back over to Wolverine and X-Force team, because this is where we see the death of this version of Predator X, with Wolverine getting eaten up by it, and then you have the classic move where he just cuts his way out of the monster through the gut. And so this is where we see the end of Predator X in this storyline right here. Now, to close the Messiah Complex storyline, we jump back to Cyclops, Cable, and Charles Xavier, because remember that Cable just gave the baby over to Cyclops. But when Cyclops is holding the baby in his arms, this is where you have Cyclops realize that maybe he should give the baby back over to Cable, because he remembers when Cable was taken into the future to be saved from the techno virus, or really find a way to fight the virus. But Cable was taken into the future to be saved. And so Cyclops is looking around thinking about what had happened here with all these different battles. And so this is where you have Cyclops give the baby back over to Cable, telling him to take the baby with him into the future so it can survive before anyone else tries to get the baby at all. Now here comes the finale for this story, where as soon as Cyclops hands the baby over to Cable, you have Bishop once again try to stop what he believes could lead to his future, because that baby in his timeline is the reason why 1 million people were killed, which then led to mutants being forced into camps. But when Bishop tries to kill Cable and get the baby, he actually ends up killing Charles Xavier, which this is where you have Charles Xavier removed from the X-Men landscape, but then you have Cyclops say that the X-Men are no more now. There will be no more X-Men. Alright guys, so this is the end of the video. Now real quick thoughts about this book. Guys, I love this storyline so much. I actually have both a physical copy and a digital copy of this book because honestly, it's just so amazing to me. Like 13 books came together and said, hey, here's a storyline of everybody fighting over a child. But the thing is though, there is not really a dull moment to me personally in this book. I mean, each chapter you read in this book is kind of like, what will happen next? Oh my God, that happened next. What's next? That happens next. And to me, honestly, every single like big surprise was a good surprise to me. Also, we finally learned a little bit about Bishop's future. That was the big thing about Bishop, because before this book came out, Bishop was this one character who came from the future in the 90s. He's kind of like, I'm here to save the future. I have to change the future. And like, Marvel never did anything really with the character at all. I mean, he had a few storylines, but honestly, nothing really helped out and said, hey, all these things he's doing right now is to change the future. And by the 2000s, he was a background character. But with this storyline right here, it was kind of cool to say, oh, okay, cool. Like, his future basically started because of the child that was born in this storyline. Now also guys, if you did not know, this is the beginning of Hope Summers, the child of Cable, the granddaughter of Cyclops. Like, the whole Hope Summer thing begins here and will go on for like a few years, and then she will disappear. But guys, honestly, this is one of my favorite storylines. It is one I do recommend you guys go pick up and purchase. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up today's video. So please leave me a like down below, and also subscribe for more comic book stories in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I will see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.